The year was 1933. A dark cloud descended upon Germany as Adolf Hitler, the charismatic yet ruthless leader of the Nazi Party, rose to power. His rise was marked by fervent speeches and grandiose promises that captivated a nation reeling from economic despair and political instability. His venomous ideology, promising national revival but built on hatred and division, quickly seeped into the fabric of German society. The propaganda was relentless, painting a picture of a new, powerful Germany, while scapegoating minorities and dissenters. The world watched with growing unease as Hitler, driven by his twisted vision, consolidated his power and set in motion the machinery of a totalitarian state. His regime swiftly dismantled democratic institutions, replacing them with a brutal dictatorship. Within Germany, fear and uncertainty gripped the hearts of many. The once vibrant and diverse society was now overshadowed by the ominous presence of the Nazi regime. The Nazi regime, with its brutal suppression of dissent and its relentless propaganda machine, cast a long shadow over the land. The Gestapo, Hitler's secret police, were empowered to arrest, torture, and execute anyone suspected of opposition. Yet, even in the darkest of times, the flame of resistance flickered. Small groups of brave individuals began to meet in secret, determined to fight back against the tyranny that had engulfed their nation. From the shadows, individuals and groups, horrified by the regime's brutality and driven by a deep sense of moral obligation, began to organize. They knew the risks but were compelled by a sense of duty to their fellow citizens and to humanity. They understood the grave danger Hitler posed, not just to Germany but to the world. His ambitions were not confined to national borders. He sought to dominate Europe and beyond. These early resistors were a diverse group, united by their opposition to Nazism. They came from all walks of life, each bringing their unique skills and perspectives to the cause. Some were disillusioned members of the military, appalled by the regime's barbarity and warmongering. They used their positions to gather intelligence and sabotage Nazi plans from within. Others were civilians from all walks of life, teachers, lawyers, priests, students, who refused to remain silent as their country descended into darkness. They used their professions and networks to spread information and rally support. Bound by their conscience and their courage, they embarked on a perilous path, risking their lives to challenge a regime that seemed invincible. They communicated through coded messages and met in secret locations to avoid detection. Theirs was a dangerous game, fraught with peril at every turn. The Gestapo's reach was extensive, and the consequences of being caught were dire. The Gestapo, Hitler's secret police, were omnipresent, their eyes and ears everywhere. They employed a vast network of informants and used advanced surveillance techniques to root out resistance. In this atmosphere of fear and suspicion, any whisper of dissent could have fatal consequences. Families were torn apart, communities lived in constant fear of betrayal. Yet, despite the risks, the resistance grew, fueled by a desperate hope that they could stop Hitler and his reign of terror before it consumed all of Europe. Their courage and determination laid the groundwork for a broader movement that would eventually play a crucial role in the downfall of the Nazi regime. As Hitler tightened his grip on Germany, the whispers of resistance grew louder, evolving into concrete plans to remove him from power. The atmosphere in Germany was becoming increasingly oppressive, with the Nazi regime's propaganda machine working overtime to suppress dissent and promote the Führer's image as an infallible leader. The early attempts to assassinate Hitler were often disorganized, driven by individual acts of courage rather than coordinated efforts. These brave souls, often isolated and working in secrecy, faced immense challenges in their quest to bring down the dictator. Their actions, though fragmented, laid the groundwork for more organized resistance movements that would emerge later. These individuals, acting largely on their own, understood the risks involved, but were willing to sacrifice everything to rid their country of its tyrannical leader. They were driven by a deep sense of duty and a moral imperative to act against the atrocities being committed in their name. Their courage and determination were a beacon of hope in a dark time. One such figure was General Hans Oster, a high-ranking officer in the German military intelligence service, the Abwehr. Oster's position within the military gave him unique insights into the inner workings of the Nazi regime, and he used this knowledge to devise plans to undermine Hitler's authority. Oster, a devout Christian and a patriot, had initially seen Hitler as a force for good, but he quickly became disillusioned by the regime's brutality and its disregard for human life. The more he witnessed, the more he realized that Hitler's vision for Germany was one of oppression and violence, not the prosperity and peace he had once hoped for. Disgusted by the atrocities he witnessed, Oster resolved to act. He knew that the path he was choosing was fraught with danger, but his conscience would not allow him to stand by and do nothing. He began to gather like-minded individuals who shared his desire to see an end to Hitler's reign. In 1938, Oster devised a daring plan to arrest Hitler and seize control of the government. This plan required meticulous planning and the cooperation of key military figures who were also disillusioned with the Nazi regime. Oster's strategy was bold, aiming to strike at the heart of the Nazi leadership and bring about a swift change in power. He believed that a swift and decisive strike, carried out during a moment of national crisis, could topple the Nazi regime. Oster's plan was to use the element of surprise to his advantage, catching Hitler and his inner circle off guard and neutralizing their ability to respond effectively. Oster's plan hinged on Hitler's aggressive foreign policy, which he correctly predicted would lead to war. He saw the impending conflict as an opportunity to rally support from those within the military who were growing increasingly uneasy with Hitler's reckless ambitions. He hoped to use the chaos of a potential conflict to mobilize his co-conspirators and overthrow the Nazi leadership. The plan was to act swiftly, taking advantage of the confusion and disarray that would accompany the outbreak of war to execute their coup. Oster's plan, however, was ultimately thwarted by a combination of factors: internal divisions within the military, logistical challenges, and the ever-present threat of discovery made the execution of such a complex operation incredibly difficult. He faced resistance from within the military, where many officers, blinded by Hitler's early successes, remained loyal to the Führer. These officers, still enamored with the victories and the promises of a restored Germany, were unwilling to risk everything on a plan that seemed destined to fail. Moreover, the Munich Agreement, which averted war with Czechoslovakia, undermined Oster's plan to exploit a national crisis. The agreement, seen by many as a diplomatic victory, temporarily eased tensions and made it more difficult to justify a coup based on the imminent threat of war. Despite the setback, Oster's courage and determination set an important precedent, demonstrating that resistance to Hitler, even from within the ranks of the military, was possible. His efforts inspired others to continue the fight, showing that there were those within Germany who were willing to stand up against tyranny. These early attempts to assassinate Hitler, though ultimately unsuccessful, were significant for several reasons. They highlighted the existence of a resistance movement within Germany, challenging the perception that the entire nation was united behind the Führer. They exposed the growing unease and opposition to Hitler's rule, even within the seemingly impenetrable walls of the Nazi regime. The fact that high-ranking military officers and other influential figures were willing to risk their lives to oppose Hitler was a powerful statement of dissent. They also highlighted the moral dilemma faced by many Germans who, torn between their loyalty to their country and their conscience, grappled with the question of how to resist a tyrannical regime. This internal conflict was a testament to the deep divisions and the struggle for the soul of Germany during this dark period in history. As World War II raged on, engulfing Europe in its fiery grip, the continent was plunged into chaos and despair. Cities were reduced to rubble, and countless lives were lost in the relentless onslaught. Amidst this turmoil, the resistance within Germany continued to plot against Hitler, driven by a desperate hope to end the tyranny and restore peace. The horrors of the war, the atrocities committed by the Nazi regime, and the growing realization that Hitler's ambitions knew no bounds only strengthened their resolve. The resistance fighters were acutely aware of the stakes, knowing that failure could mean not just their own deaths, but the continued suffering of millions. Among those who dared to resist was Major General Henning von Tresckow, a man whose courage and moral integrity set him apart. A highly decorated officer, Tresckow had grown increasingly disillusioned with the Nazi regime. His experiences on the front lines had opened his eyes to the true nature of the war. Tresckow, a man of deep moral conviction, was appalled by the atrocities he witnessed on the Eastern Front. The brutal treatment of civilians and prisoners of war, the wanton destruction, and the sheer inhumanity of it all weighed heavily on his conscience. He recognized the utter depravity of Hitler's war and the devastating consequences it held for Germany and the world. The landscapes he saw were not just battlefields, but graveyards of hope and humanity. Driven by a sense of duty to his country and to humanity, Tresckow knew he had to act. He could not stand idly by while his nation was led down a path of destruction. Tresckow became a central figure in the resistance movement, using his position within the German army to undermine the Nazi regime from within. He worked tirelessly, often at great personal risk, to coordinate efforts and gather support. In 1943, Tresckow, along with his adjutant Fabian von Schlabrendorf, devised a plan known as Operation Spark. This plan was not just a military strategy, but a beacon of hope for those who longed for an end to the nightmare. Their plan was audacious, aiming to assassinate Hitler and spark a wider uprising within the German military. They believed that a decisive blow could turn the tide and inspire others to rise up. They believed that by eliminating Hitler, they could seize control of the government and negotiate a peace treaty with the Allies, thus ending the war and sparing Germany from further destruction. It was a bold vision, one that required immense courage and meticulous planning. Operation Spark involved a complex web of co-conspirators, including high-ranking officers and officials who shared Tresckow's disgust with the Nazi regime. These individuals, though often divided by rank and background, were united by a common goal. Their plan hinged on planting a bomb on Hitler's plane, but despite their meticulous planning, fate intervened. The bomb, carefully disguised and strategically placed, was meant to be the catalyst for change. The bomb, disguised as a package of Cointreau, failed to detonate, leaving Hitler unharmed and the conspirators in a precarious position. The failure was a devastating blow, but it did not crush their spirit. Despite its failure, Operation Spark represented a significant escalation in the resistance's efforts to eliminate Hitler. It showed that there were those within Germany who were willing to risk everything for the chance to end the war. It demonstrated the growing network of individuals within the German military who were prepared to take extreme measures to stop the war and bring down the Nazi regime. These brave souls knew the dangers they faced, but their commitment to justice and peace drove them forward. The failure of Operation Spark, however, also highlighted the immense challenges and risks faced by the resistance, operating as they were within a climate of fear and suspicion. Every move they made was fraught with danger, and the cost of failure was unimaginably high. Yet, in the darkness of war, their efforts shone as a glimmer of hope, a testament to the enduring human spirit.